What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot of stuff we need to talk about today, as we are looking at a really bad severe weather outbreak for Oklahoma, Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, and points in between. And we also have another risk for tomorrow for parts of Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, all the way up to the Mid-Atlantic. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into this. This is the latest that they have as of today. They now have a moderate risk in effect for parts of Oklahoma and a small part of Texas outside of Wichita Falls. That's right, we now have a moderate risk right here, ladies and gentlemen, and we have an enhanced risk from Cincinnati all the way down to Dallas-Fort Worth. We have a slight risk from West Virginia all the way down to San Antonio, and we have a marginal risk from near Virginia Beach all the way down to Texas right here, and even pushing as far west as New Mexico. So we're going to go ahead and dive into all this, because you're probably wondering, Patrick, what are these risks about? What are you paying attention to? Here's what we're paying attention to. This is the main threat I've been paying attention to. This is the 10% hatch tornado risk, which means we have a 10% or greater probability of EF2 to EF5 tornadoes happening within 25 miles of a point. I've been talking to some other people like Fire Ant and a few other people in Storms United, and they think it should be a 15 hatched sooner rather than later. I tend to agree with them on that, as we are looking at a much more unstable environment than we were anticipating last night. Here's what we have for the wind. 30% risk for pretty much Indiana all the way down to Tulsa right here, although there's that hatched area right there, which means we have a 30% probability of winds of 65 knots, which is 75 miles per hour or greater, happening within 25 miles of a point. And considering Missouri and Illinois are right in the middle smack for that, that's probably going to be their main threat for today. But by far, what is driving this moderate risk is the hail threat. There is now a 45% hatched hail threat in parts of Oklahoma and Texas, where the moderate risk is, which means we have a 45% probability of 2-inch hail or larger happening within 25 miles of a point. And I've seen some models get up to baseball size or even larger hail than that. And we even have a 30 hatched hail all the way to the Indiana-Illinois border, and the enhanced goes all the way down to DFW. So we're going to have to pay attention to that right here. We're going to go ahead and briefly read the summary very quickly. Severe thunderstorms with very large hail, 2 to 3 inches or greater, damaging gusts 60 to 80 miles per hour, and a few tornadoes, potentially up to EF2, are expected this afternoon. Not likely, not possible, expected from north of Texas and Oklahoma into the lower Ohio Valley. That's the situation we have right there. And what's driving this is a very strong jet that is, and everything like that, as well as a few other factors. We're going to go ahead and briefly talk about the meteorology behind it, and then talk about what kind of impacts we are potentially going to be seeing. So we're going to go ahead and start with the timing of this. We're going to go ahead and go to the southern Great Plains, since that gives us the greatest vantage point of all this. And this is the HRRR at the 12Z right here. Keep in mind, this is still a little outdated. Actually, we can go ahead and use the 16Z HRRR since it's out far enough. Here's what we have for the 16Z HRRR. Storms, by and large, are generally going to start initiating severe storms, that is, around 3 to 4 p.m., and by 4 p.m., it gets really discreet in Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, and Illinois. That's why they expanded the enhanced risk area to parts of Kansas over here. So, yeah, we'll have to pay very close attention to that. I'm going to zoom in for you just to get a better vantage point of what we're looking at. And this is by 5 p.m., 6 p.m., things continue to get initiate. 7, 8 p.m., we start to see, while there is still a discrete path right here, we are starting to see a more linear setup near Oklahoma City and in areas east right there. And this is eventually expected to strengthen into a squall line. And remember yesterday's video, I was talking about a potential derecho. Well, we're still watching that threat, absolutely, but this is looking like it's going to be a massive squall line, and it looks like it's going to be impacting mainly Missouri, Illinois, those areas going into the overnight. We're not completely out just yet. We do have an extra hour going out, but we kind of can give you a general idea of what we're looking at. So yeah, Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas, we're looking at very discrete, potentially very large supercells that could produce tornadoes and extremely large hail with all of this. So that's what we're really paying attention to. What are we looking at with the Cape with all this? Let's see what we're looking at around the time of initiation. This is about 4 p.m., right here. We're looking at Cape cracking 3,000 joules per kilogram in parts of Oklahoma, Kansas, and Missouri right there, cracking up to 2,000 in the St. Louis area, which is pretty much on watch for all major threats today. So we have to pay very close attention to that. That's what we're looking at right there. The most unstable Cape, similar situation right there. We're going to go ahead and use the supercell composite as well. Supercell composite is relatively large in parts of Oklahoma right here. We're seeing a general area of like 10 to 15 plus supercell composite, which that's a lot of juice for these things to work with. While in Missouri, we're seeing more scattered stuff. We saw a rating of up to 22 in parts of western Missouri right there, although generally it's around like 5 to 10 in a lot of these areas right there, although that is going to increase as we continue to go into the overnight, and as the squall line starts to develop. We do see a massive increase in parts of Oklahoma and Texas right here. That's why they expanded the slight risk further south. SIG-TOR parameter. This is what we're going to be paying attention to right here. SIG-TOR parameter isn't the best tool, I will say, but we're seeing a SIG-TOR parameter of 12 in parts of Oklahoma right there, and we're seeing a general SIG-TOR parameter like of relatively large stuff going around 5 p.m. And it is, and while it's kind of hard to really take a look at, let's go ahead and use the wrap and see if we can get any better view. Yeah, we can definitely see what we have going on with the RAP model. We're seeing several SIG-TOR parameters. This is at 7 p.m., cracking 10 right there. Supercell composite's still relatively large, so we'll have to pay attention to that. We're going to go ahead and look at a few soundings right here just to kind of see what we're looking at. We're going to look at one near Tulsa. We're going to look at one near St. Louis, and we're going to look at one near Terre Haute, because I want to gauge what kind of threats we're potentially looking at right here. So here's what we have in Tulsa right here, and we're going to have to pay very close attention to this. We have pretty much a decent lapse rate right here. We have relatively decent shear. Surface to 6 kilometers is at 51 knots, and this at 4 p.m. right there. Surface to 3 kilometers is at 38 knots, which could definitely help your tornado development. We're seeing 2,600 joules per kilogram of Cape from at surface level at this point. So we're going to have to keep a very close eye on it. Here's what we're looking at in St. Louis right here. Lapse rate's not as impressive, but we are seeing a more of a directional shear. We're seeing about 21 knots of surface to 3 kilometers and 46 knots of surface to 6 kilometer, which could definitely help with some tornado development, as well as some very large hail development right there. And then here's what we're looking at for Terre Haute, around this region right there. Around Terre Haute in southern Indiana right there. Things are getting pretty interesting as you guys are now under an enhanced risk, although I will say the tornado threat, if you look at the surface to 1 kilometer, is about 10 knots, so it might not be enough for it to finally touch the ground. Surface to 3 kilometer, though, is something to pay attention to. It's at 39 knots, so I will say there is a lesser of a chance of a tornado happening in Terre Haute than in like St. Louis or even Tulsa for that matter. But what I do see potentially happening is more of a hail threat and more of a wind threat, because what we're potentially looking at by the time it gets to around southern Indiana, that region, is more of a squall line setup. Squall tornado may be possible, but it's very hard for those things to really organize and really just touch down. So I would say with just the shear that we're looking at, it's going to be more of a large hail and very damaging wind threat from what I'm taking a look at. So that's what we're looking at right there for pretty much what we're seeing going throughout all of this. You're kind of just probably saying, you've been talking about the meteorology. What are the impacts going to be? I've been kind of sprinkling it in a little bit, but here's what I think the main impacts are going to be pretty much going into this right there. The main impact is going to be large hail, and tornadoes are going to be a very close second to that. Personally, I think around the 3 p.m., if they see more data come in, they're probably going to up this to a 15 hatched, and we'll go ahead and show you Colorado State University's guidance right here. Yeah, this is what they have going for right here. This is what they have at 12Z. Here's their tornado forecast. They have a 15% risk area across a lot of Oklahoma and Texas and even into Arkansas right there. That's what their model is popping up, and I think that could be a 15 hatched area right there. For what I'm looking at right here, this is for the hail probability. It's around that 45% hatched area, kind of like we saw with the SPC. Wind risk, yeah, I kind of have to agree with that. But yeah, I'm thinking once again, hail and tornadoes are going to be the main threat for this severe weather outbreak, especially in Oklahoma, especially in Arkansas, especially in Missouri, and even into the St. Louis area, into Illinois, and possibly into Indiana, although at that point it's going to be more of a hail and wind threat at this current point in time. But yeah, the Colorado State University forecast now has a 15% area right there. Max probability is at 0.239, which is rather concerning to say the very least. Max probability for hail 0.543. That's kind of to be expected at this point. Max threat for wind is 0.385, which that's actually also expected. That's why they issued the 30 hatched right there. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if at 3 p.m. they go with a 15 hatched in parts of Oklahoma and Texas over here. So that's kind of my thinking with all this, because there is absolutely a huge possibility for significant tornadoes today. In fact, this is an all hands on deck day and on the Pat's Path Predictor channel, and an all hands on deck day on Storms United, as we are going to be monitoring this as time continues to go on. Last thing I want to kind of touch on a little bit before I go is just what I know a lot of this, you're seeing a lot of this and you're probably freaking out right now. The number one thing I need you guys to do is to remain calm. You're looking at all this data, you're probably not a little perplexed about what the hell is going on. I completely get that. But it is very imperative that you remain calm, prepare for the worst, pray for the best. That's the best thing you can do at this point. I highlighted all the risks and the hazards you guys are going to possibly be seeing. That's pretty much me doing my part. But I need you guys to do your part as well and kind of just remain calm, take these with a grain of salt, and we'll see what verifies. But what I will say, though, is when my conversation with Fire Ant last night, he was raising the alarm bells with me, and that's pretty concerning to say the very least right there. And the reason I say that's concerning is because, well, we saw several AFDs last night. I'm going to try and pull one up from NWS St. Louis, because that's the one I was paying attention to because of kind of what we were potentially looking at. Here's the AFD they put out this morning right here. Primary concern through tonight is upcoming severe weather. They have some uncertain specifics. However, overall confidence in widespread severe thunderstorms impacting the bi-state area has increased over the past 24 hours. The reason for this is more delayed development of convection later today, and that kind of stuff, because that's what I'm paying attention to right there, and that's kind of the main thing that I'm paying attention to. And we were going over AFDs last night, just kind of reading them and just kind of looking at, okay, what's the SPC saying? What are these AFDs saying? Because the AFDs kind of where I was looking at showed that it was going to be a potentially worse situation the SPC was saying, but take that with a grain of salt. There is a lot of uncertainty to do until it happens. But with that being said, we are going to keep you updated. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We are very close to 6,000 subscribers, so if we could get that done today, that would be much appreciated. So share this video with your friends. Tell them to subscribe to the channel as we get more people engaged with weather, because that is the main goal of Pat's Path Predictor. But with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.